All right, everybody, welcome to the Millennial Trucker podcast and YouTube show. I don't know, it's an audio show. I am your host, Luke, the Millennial Trucker, and I hope you had your morning coffee. I know I do miss that pilot coffee. It is definitely my go-to as far as the big truck stop coffees go. But loves coffee. Always leaves something to be desired. Petro coffee, Flying J coffee is pretty good. I'm not sure. I think they get it from the same place. Um, but the worst coffee of the big truck stop is TA. Ooh, TA coffee is it's like, why do they even bother? It's like, if I'm desperate, I'll get it. But as a hand on the road up and over by Denison, Texas, once told me over to CB, it's shit coffee for a shit driver. So now that the tones have been set, I have the words trucker news punched into my google.com search box. And I'm going to hit Google search and see what comes up. I'm not even sure what comes up. I haven't tested this out. But top stories: trucker killed in crash caused by another truck driver striking and downing a highway sign. What's this about? Wow, look at that. Yeah, that's the big highway sign. Oh wow. Wow, look at the result after that. A crash occurred. The Tennessee Highway Patrol has confirmed that the truck driver lost his life in a crash involving a highway sign. Yikes. Moment of silence for the fallen. The crash occurred shortly after 4 p.m. on June 3rd on I-24 in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. Say that the westbound truck on I-24 near Salem Highway exit when the highway veered off the right side of the interstate and struck a highway sign. The strike caused the highway sign to crash down into the lanes of the westbound I-24. The driver of the truck that struck the sign was not injured. Um, a second semi truck driven by 57-year-old Tennessee resident Eric Kinman Wago struck down the sign and lost control, causing his truck to overturn. Kinman Wago passed away at the scene. So the driver of the truck that struck the sign was not injured. Wow. Yeah. So okay. So this, I'm not sure which one. So this guy was fine. This guy wasn't. This is a driver that passed away. Wow. Well, that's unfortunate. I didn't mean to start the show with some uh, Barber news. Look at this. U.S. trucker shortage means everything is more expensive. CNN. What a joke. The trucking industry has been short on drivers for years, but the pandemic made it worse. Okay. There is an article that I did like that I read by NPR. I'm just gonna type in NPR. Is there really a truck driver shortage? Now this is a really good article. Um, but just reporters, Greg Rosowski. So it was a perfect anecdote to whiz around the internet. Oh, so I don't know if any of you seen this story about Sisu Energy, this oil company down in Texas, advertising $14,000 a week, pay 728K a year, but that was that was actually sent to me from from a buddy of mine, and so according to this, that applies to contractors. When you do haul for oil companies in the oil fields, oil companies generally don't own trucks. I know there's a few exceptions. I think Tesoro has their own trucks, but in general, like ExxonMobil, which are I think in the oil fields they go by XTO, or they might have a few companies, but So they so $14,000 a week for independent contractors is it's normal. It's not like, but they made it sound like you just had to go. You had to all you have to do is carpet bag it to the Texas oil fields, and you could start making this money. This is for frac sand blasting, but we're not here to talk about oil field driving. We're here to talk about the quote unquote shortage that's been going on, and it's been an issue. It's been a topic of discussion since the 80s. So this has been going on for a long time, but the the big issue is that the pay hasn't reflected a truck driver shortage. So that's where things get the question of whether or not there's a truck driver shortage comes into play. Um, but I think this article is saying is that see, the real problem, Spencer says, it's not a shortage but retention. According to ATA's own statistics, the average turnover rate for long haul truckers at big trucking companies has been greater than 90% for decades, which is true. It's like it's so much of a common practice for drivers to jump company to company. That's a normal thing. It's like trucking companies don't even blink when they see, like, oh, okay, well, you've been with 5 different trucking companies in the past 4 years. That's not a big deal, because it's like, well, they need somebody to drive a truck, and if you have a clean record, then yeah, they don't really care if you worked for all these companies. Um, Actually, that's how you gain a lot of experience, especially the specialized experience. But the problem is like these big companies that hire truck drivers straight out of trucking school. First of all, they don't pay that well. They don't pay that well at all. So I always suggest to people, do not feel like you have to stay at these big companies. You don't owe these big companies anything. They will get rid of you as soon as they feel you're inconvenient. They don't care about you as a human being. I know some advertise like that they do care about you. They don't. Your dispatcher might care about you, but overall as a company, they don't. You're just you're just a P&L statement to them. So let's see. We have, during the time where outsourcing and automation have eroded opportunities for blue-collar workers, millions of Americans have been enticed into giving driving a try. But Pacelli says the business practice of big trucking companies burn them out fast. My first company that I worked for ran me ragged, and the pay wasn't all that great, but I knew it was paying my dues, I guess. I knew that I wasn't going to stay at that company for very long, that I just want to get my 1 year experience and move on to the next. And I didn't feel bad about leaving, just because they treated me terribly. And this was back in the day where like they have e-logs now. This was and back, when I say back in the day, that's relative to to the truck driver. So my back in the day would be, I started truck driving in 2005, and as soon as I turned 21, I was like, yeah, let's get that CDL. And when I went into it, it's just like the first company, they showed us how to be creative with logbooks. So in paper logs. So that means it's like, if you really want to rewrite your day, you can. You just have to make sure your fuel stops match up. If you pass a scale house, chicken coop, weigh station, that you make that match too. But other than that, you could say, you could drive for 6 hours that day, and if the next day you need more or less or whatever, you could just throw those hours on the previous day. It's like, I know that doesn't make too much sense, but I mean, let's just say it's you could lie on your paper log books pretty easy. You could still lie on your e-logs too. It's like that's one of the big things. And they mentioned this ATA, and I wanted to talk about this ATA for a little bit. I know first episode, I'm going all over the place, but you know what? This is my show. ATA is not your friend. Anytime you hear like a bill um, on Capitol Hill, I'm just a bill, or sponsored by the ATA. They don't represent truckers. They represent trucking companies, especially the big trucking companies. So they represent, the administration side, let's say, and whatever bill that they sponsor or any lobbying that they do, you rest assured that they're out there to screw the driver. They don't care about the driver. They put these bills out that have, especially in the name of safety, and that's a big thing. You put safety, truck safety. Of course, it's like, why wouldn't you want to pass that bill? It's like, oh, safety, but no, they're not doing it for safety. They're doing it to keep labor cheap. And they talk about this truck shortage. You're talking about a shortage of cheap labor. It's like before raising the pay of truck drivers, they will do everything else. They will spend an obscene amount of money lobbying to bring cheap labor into the market. They try doing that with the sort of a pilot program for drivers from Mexico to do deliveries in the United States, or automation. It's like they're really pushing for that, and it really is not the best organization to represent truckers. OIDA, the owner operator independent Drivers Association. They're the ones that represent truckers. So if you see things sponsored by OIDA, then they're representing truckers. I just want to make that clear. ATA, they're a cartel basically, and they're not good. They're really not good. It's like, from my perspective, from a trucker perspective, they are downright bad and evil. So, but Vassetti says, through political lobbying, legal activism, and harsh business practices, big trucking companies have made a difficult job even harder, especially for entry-level truckers. He says companies have been systematically degrading trucker working conditions. Scholars have referred to trucks as sweatshops on wheels. Vasselli says that the industry is rife with minimum wage violations that he calls debt peonage. Basically, new drivers become indentured servants, go into deep into debt, into training, and into lease trucks from their employers. I always tell people, do not do the driver training for big companies like I know Swift, Prime does that. Stevens. Do not go to their schools. They're just traps. They're debt traps. Especially do not go into a lease program with any of these companies. Whatever you do, just don't. They'll tell you you're gonna make this much money, and it sounds like a lot of money. And especially for entry level truck drivers, it's like, yeah, the reason people are going into truck driving isn't because things are going well. It's like, this is an opportunity to make more money. And if you have a big company offering you here's more money, then you're gonna be enticed into doing it. But rest assured, once you're on the lease program, they want you to pay for that truck that you're driving. They don't want to pay for the truck that you're driving. So I always suggest, if you're an entry level driver and you're just fresh out of school, you really should get your experience in somebody else's truck. Do not, because if you get into an accident or whatever in your own truck or whatever, or you have problems, it becomes your problem. And they're really not there to have your back. And also, with these lease programs, they'll tell you that you're not an employee, but you can only accept loads from that company. So you're not independent at all. You can't go to a load board and say like, oh, I want to take this load or whatever. You have to go through your company, even though you're not an employee. You have to go, contractually obliged to go through them for all your loads, and they have truck payments too. They're the big company, so the company drivers driving those lease trucks. I mean, because they are leasing those trucks. Yeah, every 3 years they get new trucks, and they need to make those payments. But when it comes to company drivers versus independent truck drivers, then they're gonna really make their payments first. When it comes down to it, when it comes down to the wire, they're gonna starve you out before starving themselves out. That's just the way it is. I've seen it happen. It's terrible, but people don't think about that. And so I kind of went off on the whole thing with and they do have an article. I might go over it later on, but this is a big issue, and I think it needs to be talked about extensively. And for my subscribers, thank you for staying subscribed. It's just like I've been playing around with this idea of doing something like this for a while, and I want to talk to other truck drivers. Still figuring out how to get the phone system set up. I do have an idea. I do have it like halfway set up, but I would like to interview truck drivers over the phone. I kind of toyed with the idea of doing it at a truck stop, but it's like I know once I'm done with my day, the last thing I want to do is sit in a truck stop and talk for a couple of hours. I kind of just, but I will talk for hours and hours and hours, on the road. It's because I'm in the flow, I'm in the zone, so I could be more in the moment, I guess, when it comes to that. So that's something I'd like to do. And if you're a truck driver that, I have some ideas of people I want to talk to, but I want to get everybody's opinion, because the trucking culture, it really is a mosaic of different types of people, and that's one of the reasons why I chose truck driving. Number one, I could listen to podcasts and music and just drive. I love driving, listening to music, podcasts, so that's all I wanted to do. Also, I just wanted to meet interesting people, and truckers are very interesting people, and they're all over the place. It's definitely a fun hanging out to fringes of society, I guess. So yeah, truck driver shortage. Is it real? Is it not real? This article is saying that it's more, the truck driver shortage is definitely caused by the trucking companies themselves, because pay hasn't been raised. And here's another scam. And drivers are at the bottom rung of the money ladder, So if you're like, say you're a shipper and you want to, you have stuff to ship because you're a shipper, obviously, and you go through a broker, and you go either you go directly to the company, would probably makes it more convenient. It's better for the driver. If the only middleman is your dispatcher, but now you have brokers. Once you have brokers come into play, it's like, okay, that's fine. It's like independent contractors, they use brokers all the time, but sometimes you'll get brokers who use brokers. You have like layers of brokers. Each layer of broker takes a little bit of money from the pot. And by the time the total of the pay for the load comes down to the driver, it's as you're basically getting the leftover of what these brokers take a percentage of. And plus, administration takes a lot of money. It takes a lot of money. not it takes a lot of money to run. They literally take your money. So that's one of the ways that wages can be suppressed, and it all goes back to the you see Maslow's I don't know hierarchy of needs. All right, let's check out this Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and we show you where they want to keep drivers. All right, so physiological needs: air, water, food, shelter, sleep, clothing, reproduction. Um, you know, if you're insecure in this right here, then you're not going to be. Oh, right here, safety needs: personal security, employment, resources, help, property. If you're insecure over here, and that's typically where these companies want to keep you. It's these big companies, because they don't like you complaining about their bad practices. But if they keep you insecure, all you're thinking about is making more money, running, and that's how they keep you running ragged. It's like, and their fear is that if they pay you more, you're gonna want to spend time at home. But if they pay you less, and you feel like you have to stay on the road for longer, then that's better for the company, because your safety needs, your, resources, health, property, if you have mortgage payments to make, if you're insecure in those, then you're not going to get love, belonging, esteem, self-actualization, which is the final boss, right? So how can we have how can you make a truck driver shortage stop? Just pay more. But no, that's the last thing that'll happen. And I have seen articles where, and I'll get to those about and they make such a big deal out of it. And this is what cheeses me off the most. They make such a big deal out of it, like these big companies. Oh, we're paying our drivers more. There was one article that I saw. Let's see. There we go. Like rail right here. Oh, look at this. Rail transport will increase driver pay for the second time of the year. These increases will add between $4,000 to $6,000 or more to most company drivers' annual pay. $40,000, $45,000 a year for a truck driver. It's terrible pay. It really is. Because you're working 60, 70 hours a week driving these trucks. And if you break it down, if you work like 7 days a week, well, I mean, you're not gonna be working those hours 7 days a week, but let's say you're working 6 days a week, 5 or 6 days a week, doing 60 70 hours, still a lot. Then you're more or less and there's no overtime, and this is all paid by the mile. So that's another thing. It's like and just to let you know that I'm not just making stuff up here. Swift. Let's see right here. Taylor Swift trucking lawsuit. Was it Knight Swift agrees to $100 million settlement misclassification lawsuit. They agreed to a settlement in a class action lawsuit involving roughly 20,000 drivers over claims that drivers were improperly classified as independent drivers rather than full employees. The estimated amount of up to $100 million was fully reserved on the company's balance sheet as a blah, 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 blah. Okay. The lawsuit claims that Swift treated truck drivers who leased trucks through the company as independent contractors, even though they were acted as full-time employees. Swift allegedly made unlawful deductions from the driver's pay, truck lease payments, gas, equipment, maintenance, insurance, tolls, and other expenses. Lawyers for the drivers argue that this is a violation of the federal minimum wage law because drivers are legally considered employees. They also argue that drivers could not have been truly independent because Swift was able to terminate the lease for any person at all, and continue to demand that all lease payments continue to be made. The near decade-long case has been a rough multiple. See, like stuff like this. This is regular stuff. And this isn't like the only lawsuit. And call it a settlement. So that, typically they don't admit guilt to any of this. They're like, here, we'll just settle. Let's see. And let's see, truck driver poaching. I don't even know what that means. I mean, there's a lot of bad stuff being done. And when if you're a big company that makes these settlements or whatever, it's like, that's just terrible. That's just terrible. It is a terrible way to treat drivers. It's like and going back to the pay by the mile, the reason why I looked this stuff up. And this lawsuit is an old lawsuit. This misclassification deal is fairly recent, but this lawsuit that I'm talking about is basically shorting the drivers on miles. So what they do a lot of the times is like when you get a delivery as a company driver or whatever, company independent, whatever, is that they, instead of doing door-to-door miles like you would if you went to if you use Google Maps and you type in address, that's door-to-door miles. It tells you exactly how many miles it's going to take you to go from point A to point B. But I don't know if they do this practice. When I was driving, one of the big practices was doing zip code to zip code instead of driving, doing door-to-door. So that way, in zip code to zip code, which means if you're in the middle of a zip code, I guess, square. Imagine you're in the middle of that square, and then you pick up a load in the middle of that square, and then you get to the edge, to the to the border of that square. That's where your miles start. You don't get paid for the miles, from the shipper to the end of the zip code line. And once you get to your destination, and here's your receiver, here's a box for your receiver. You get paid for, as soon as you hit that zip code, your miles stop. So it's basically shaving off miles, and if you shave off 10 miles for every driver, for every driver in a big company, that's a lot of money. That's a lot of money. So these are just some of the things. I haven't even that's just a tip of the iceberg of what these companies do. So that's why I always say, if you're fresh out of school and you're going to one of these big companies, do not stay with them. Do not stay with them. Go to a smaller company because they pay more, they treat you better. It's a world of difference. People think that going to a smaller company, it's like, oh, they don't have money, because they're paying their drivers like normal, and they're normal people. Most of the time, they're farmers. They're farmers with trucks. It's like farmers with trucks, and they're like, oh wait, I can make more. I have trucks, and I can make money doing this or whatever, instead of hauling grain or. And it's just better. It just makes a world of difference. Do not stay at these big companies, especially if the ones that are part of the ATA cartel, because you're not gonna have a good time. But anyways, I think I blabbed on for long enough. Thank you for checking. If you made it to the end, thank you for making it here. And I'm not sure if I have anything else to say. I'm excited to do this. I've done a few like pilot episodes just to kind of like test out the equipment or whatever, but I just want to do these live and just ship these, But anyways, drivers, And I also want to, um, and if you're wondering what this appeals to drivers already driving, especially appeals. I do want to get new drivers into the industry, and I know there's a lot of people who do like, but there's also a lot of people who are interested but don't do it, and the people that do it, um, they're a little bit what do you call that? Disenchanted, or they find out trucking is not what they thought it'd be. So I also want to get stories from other truckers how they started. It's like that's when one of the things that helped me out was when I was thinking about going into truck driving is that I knew, um, not that I knew truck drivers, but I had friends who knew truck drivers that could give me information on that. So that really helped as far as my confidence into like going into trucking, going into the trucking. I call it diesel college. Going into diesel college and just doing the training program. It changed my life, and I'm very thankful that that I was able to that my younger self had enough confidence, even though I had no idea how to drive stick. I had no clue what I was doing, but I know I wanted to do it, and the big difference was just having information. You never know what little nugget can really push somebody into the trucking industry, because I really like the industry. I really like the trucking industry. I think it's all great, except as far as the culture goes, I guess. And I know it can get better. And it is getting better. And I want to know how other um, drivers started truck driving, because it's different. I know some truck drivers who come from trucker families, or I know people who just want a fresh start, and trucking really is a fresh start. It's definitely a game changer. So, anyways, blabbed on for long enough. Keep that shiny side up, that rubber side down.